Hello everyone, my name is Michael Rusin. I am a developer who has been developing for a number of years and copied numerous materials of things. Now today I'd like to make a video about becoming a better communicator and improving the communication infrastructure of your workplace. This is a very critical thing that is very critical to programmers and otherwise. Step 1. Pipelining communication. What do I mean by pipelining communication? A pipeline is a clear path of communication where the propagation of information is clear, right? Now, this is not something that is inherently extremely difficult, nor is it something that is inherently default to a lot of people. What I mean by that is that, for example, say that you are working remote. This could increase the difficulty of yielding communication with you in terms of that you can be less accessible, lest you integrate systems such as a social communication platform, maybe Slack, Skype, Trello, whatever, some kind of communication platform that you can talk through in some way. Otherwise, just a normal phone call works as well. But the easiest way to actually assert that both the product and the development process is done as good as possible is by virtue of talking to people in person. This could include that the customer himself is by the workspace and that the developers are all present. Now, if it is someone you have very high confidence for and that they don't need a lot of babysitting and whatnot, then yes, they could still be away working remote, but the problem would still be that the end goal result and integration of team works better if everyone is present. Number 2, conflict handling. How do we handle conflict? Conflict is an inevitable state in terms of development, in terms of workplace environments and whatever not. It is an inevitable state of happening. It will occur at some point. And each conflict should be seen as for constructive purposes, it can be seen as a challenge of growth. Like it could be a challenge to grow as a person or as a team. Because generally, when a conflict is performed or handled well, then the team is strengthened by the result, the resolution of said conflict. Whereas if it is a poorly resolved conflict, integration of ideas did not work or creative differences came in the way or whatnot, then the problem becomes that the team can suffer. The team and the workplace can suffer. So, what is the good way to handle conflicts? A good way to handle conflicts is to not take it personally. Do not aggregate or hyperbole with your own emotions. Furthermore, try to prioritize and synergize with language that puts emphasis on unity. That means do not use provocative language in form of I think. Do not make it about you and them. Make it about a team as a whole. Make it more akin to I think that we could gain more from doing this. Do we as a team gain from this? Do we as a team prioritize communication like this? Do we as a team grow from the fact of performing like this? And also it's very important to reflect what they're feeling and how they're feeling, as I've covered in previous videos. Number 3, workflows. Workflows is extremely important in terms of people knowing what to do and when to prioritize things and whatnot. Now, normally this is an administrative task, but a lot of times perhaps the boss is having more prospects of new customers or handling other tasks and overseeing other projects. He does not have all the time in the world. So sometimes administrative tasks is something that is a fluid task that comes down to the programmers as well. Now, as a programmer, we have to be very flexible in our role of, you know, propagating change, propagating prioritization in terms of development. What do we prioritize in the project? At what point do we do what thing? At what point do we stop to think, what is it we need to do next? What is it we need to stop and take a step back and see what are we doing? What do we want to do? A lot of the time, I see that people, they end up in this trap of that they focus on the results with almost like a tunnel vision. You know, they see like, I just want that one thing. I just want this to work. But in programming, divide and conquer is almost always the superior strategy in terms of that. So you have to take a step back, realize what is it you're trying to achieve, and then make a structured path to that thing. So say, for instance, you want to integrate a database. Now, that is not a very concrete thing. It is concrete in terms of development, but it's not very concrete in terms of problem solving. Like, what is the database supposed to solve? Is it supposed to be local, remote? What kind of database? What is the data integrity needed, etc., etc., etc. And you can answer all of these things by virtue of making a plan beforehand, flowcharts or user cases or whatnot, by going through what is it you need to do and what is it you're trying to achieve, right? Number 4, customer relations. A customer in terms of development is number 1. But a customer and you have a very special relation, especially if you are a developer that is in direct communication with said customer. The customer is the one you deliver the project to and says what goes and what does not, but you get to be the mediator of telling them if that's possible and how much time that takes and whatnot. Now, as a developer, we have to be very, very aware of what our role is. Our role is not to go in and dominate the customer. We are to give the customer space to be able to express themselves, to be able to say that, well, I want this kind of thing, and there has to be a dialogue. There has to be a form of communication. They have to be asking, and you have to equally be asking them. There has to be a flow of communication there. They have to be saying, is this possible? And you have to ask them, what is it you really want? So what it all boils down to in terms of customer relation is that you should really, really prioritize writing down whatever is being, agreed upon. That should be in the papers of agreements. That should be legally enforceable in terms of a legally binding document. And the customer should be equally acute aware of this. Preferably there should be as great transparency as possible. Because if you're honest and you are having honest dealings, you have no reason to not be transparent. Then you can just put it on paper. How much does each hour cost? How many hours are projected? What is it you're trying to do? What are you trying to achieve? Right? Right. So that's customer relations. And keep in mind, being fair does not mean being an asshole. That does not mean always prioritizing the money. That means also prioritizing how is the customer feeling. Is the customer aggravated? Is the customer relaxed? Is the customer being too greedy? Is he being too conservative? Is he scared? Is he worried? Pay close attention to these things. Perform documentation of his behavior during the meetings and have a profiling of your customers. Some customers can be very problematic, whilst others are, genuinely good people. Number 5, personal understanding of role. This one is epitome. This one is big as a mountain. This one is extremely, extremely important. In a workplace or a project overall, there is a structure of a hierarchy. And this hierarchy does not exist because of the sole reason of, someone being more important than someone else. It is there because you can impossibly, it is a state of fact that you can impossibly, during designated amount of time, realistically within your workspace, do everything. You cannot fully fulfill every single role of responsibility. It's impossible, technically. Realistically, that's impossible. That's why different people do different things. Now, granted, the more you know, the more you can jump into different roles, but very seldomly do you, even as a full stack, sit and, be solely, wholesomely responsible for a project. That's very rare, at least from my knowledge. So what does this mean? This means that in difficult situations of development, you should not, I repeat, you should not, regardless of what you feel in the situation, step outside of your role. Only if that is needed do you step outside of your role. If it is truly so that there is need of a structure and no one else steps up, then sure, you can unpersonally, depersonalized, step up with a structure and assume the pseudo role of a leader if there isn't one. But if your role is a sales manager, or you are a recruitment manager, or you are PR handler, or whatever you are, I repeat, 9 out of 10 times, do not, for the love of God, step outside of your role. The reason this is so important is because if you do that, you are very likely to, one, step outside of your area of expertise. Now, normally, if you are learning, this is not a bad thing. But in a situation where you have a lot of customers or you have big projects running, that's a very bad thing. You should really know what you're doing if you are stepping outside of your role. You should not just haphazardly, run out and try to handle customers if you are a programmer who has never talked to a human being before. And that's not trying to be harsh, that's just state of fact that perhaps you are autistic, perhaps you are really, really good at code, but you have no understanding of empathy or emotional correspondence or whatever not, So never really step outside of your role unless needed to, and if you do so in a constructive manner. And what this means is that you should not do this out of desperation. You should do it as a calculated, knowing move, which means that have a plan, have a direction, know what you're doing, have steps to fulfill this, have some kind of research to back you up. Don't just randomly go on gut feeling that like, oh shit, I have to promise this customer what we're gonna do, and then realize afterwards, once the dust is settled, that you have promised a deal to a customer that is worth $200,000 or $300,000 and you can't deliver. That's really, 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 really bad. That's like extremely bad. Don't do that. Do not, for the love of God, I swear, do not do that. If you do that with a team of experts or professionals or people who are invested and know what they're doing. And if you are not that person, if you do not have the slightest of an actual factual backing up, and by that I do not mean what you personally know, I mean research, documented, resourced research. Lest you have that to back your claims and your doings up, do not do it. Don't do it. That is a very dangerous move to do. Lest you know what you're doing, don't do that. Anyway, guys, that has been my 5 points for the day, and I do these when I feel like it. I feel like I'll probably do these during weekends because I can't necessarily record books during weekends because I have to relax. But I still want to make videos, so I'll make those during the weekends. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for listening. If you want to leave feedback or talk to me, whatever, you can reach me in the comments below as per usual. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!